So, hello everyone. Welcome to the Future Podcast. Today is with you, your host Aaron Alexander, and myself Mahat. And we have a very special guest here today with us, Nithin Kunneparambil. He is currently the third Secretary of Commerce and Education, Embassy of India in Cairo, in Egypt. Very pleased to have you here, Nithin. Welcome to the Future Podcast. Yeah.
Thank you, Mahat and Aaron. It's a pleasure to be here.
To give a little bit of background about how I met him while we were in Trivandrum, and he was my mentor, like institute where I was preparing for civil service exams, and I used to remember him for being very good at teaching history. You really had this flair and making history interesting. Until that point, you were pretty famous among the students. You can't deny that. I always remember him as this person who really brought interest in history to me, myself as personally. I would like to put that there. And today we'll be talking a lot about history, about Egypt. What else are we talking, Aaron? India, history, Egypt relations?
Yes, I would like to jump right in, and if I can ask you, Nitin, to provide a little bit of background and introduction into yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm Nitin. I come from this place called as Palakkad in Kerala, and I did my schooling there in Palakkad. Very average student, can't really say that I was any bright student there. From there, I moved to Cochin, to the Cochin University of Science and Technology. And like every other person of our generation, I ended up doing engineering as well. But the biggest mistake I made was most of the smart ones of our generation, they stopped there with BTech. So I had this crazy dream to, pursue further because I really thought I'm a techie. And I moved to doing my master's in IIT Kharagpur in radio frequency engineering. Mm-hmm. And then again, that was again a good time where I could have quit, but I didn't. I still pursued it a bit further. I worked as a patent analyst in Hyderabad for some time. And then I moved to Bangalore to Robert Bosch, where I joined a research team. And then I moved to Germany, to Robert Bosch itself, to the corporate research. I was a research scientist there. Again, I came back to the Indian office. That's when I started engaging myself with the social causes. I started associating myself with the theater art forms in Bangalore. Also, I started doing this very interesting job of teaching English to the common working plot of the company. So I used to go early in the morning around 6ish and then work in the company for a while there while teaching English to the drivers, the cleaning staff, and then get back to my regular work. So that's a moment of epiphany for me in the sense that I thought the work which I was doing beyond my actual work was giving me a lot of pleasure and a sense of purpose. So that's the time when I decided maybe I should quit and I should teach. I should volunteer and teach, some remote parts of the country, like Teach for India, such platforms. That's the moment when I thought, maybe the problems of our country is very structural. This needs to happen through a change in the system and, the whole educational apparatus and the governance. So I thought maybe I will take a stint at it, by taking 1 year of sabbatical. So then I took a break from the work, which was quite, I think, I had a decent trajectory ahead in terms of, a career in the corporate, but I chose this path. And then, I gave a few attempts at, the UPSC civil service exam. Yeah, in the brief while to sustain myself, I had to do some other jobs as well. That's how I ended up being Mahat's teacher, where I used to teach history. But in the meantime, I picked up one more degree in history, a master's in history, and from IGNO, and I kept on reading. It is a very fascinating topic, and I think there is almost no day in my life that goes by where I don't read something on this front. And there's so much interesting stories. So I think, that's how I ended up being in the foreign services. And then I trained in Labasna, that is Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration. Then I did a brief stint in the Foreign Service Institute in Delhi. I was a silver medalist of my batch. And then I was posted as the undersecretary in the consular passport and visa in the headquarters for a while. And then I've come here as the third secretary. So in the Indian Foreign Service, if you don't know, every diplomat is asked to specialize in one language. So I have chosen Arabic as my language. And since Cairo is a seat of culture, Arab culture, they have sent me here to pick up the Arabic language. So I'm studying at Arabic in the American University of Cairo. At the same time, also working in the embassy. Yes, you get to be trained in different facets of embassy's work, especially in culture, in politics. But my area of specialization as of now here in Cairo is commerce and education. I'll tell you what education is. Maybe we can talk a bit more later about it. So that's pretty much about it.
I mean, I had no idea about all this until now. Like I knew from you only. I think you had told, like, if you choose IFS, they'll ask you what language you want to learn, and they'll send you there. And I remember you telling this, like, yeah, that's an interesting choice, Arabic.
Ticks a lot of boxes, isn't it? Like a Malayali in the Arab world, isn't it? Probably Arab can attest to it.
So, like, how did you come up to selecting Arabic?
So yeah, in the sense that I had a flair for this topic and this region for a very long. This, unlike any other place, I have always felt that this region of the Middle East and North Africa is inextricably connected with the Indian subcontinent.
Okay.
Historically as well, and also politically, diplomatically, trade-wise, there are n number of ways in which it has been connected. But the problem is, in India there is two stream of thoughts in which you view the country. One is a land-based thought, the other one is a sea-based thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for example, I think this is it's very interesting in history itself. If you really see the Guptas and the big kings of the north, they would say that the king whose empire stretches all the way till the sea. The Guptas used to say they have a term for it, where they say that a king whose empire stretches till the sea. But if you see Vijayanagara, they would call themselves as Trisamudradipati, the owner of the three oceans. You see the difference there? That's a strategic thought of India, a land-based thought and a sea-based thought. And it comes also from the place that you come from. And, like I come from Kerala, a coastal state, and I've always seen the history and, the trade, everything comes through the state. So people from Gujarat, people from Kerala, people from, Andhra, Tamil Nadu. So these people have a ocean-based thought. So I think I'm that ocean-based thought of the ministry. So I think, I see India through oceans as well. Because of that, I could see Arab world as neighbors, just separated by the ocean. It's not like a different country altogether. It's like neighbors, like connected by the sea, not separated. Yeah.
That's absolutely fascinating. How long have you been in Egypt?
It's been almost a year. Yeah, almost a year. But again, I'm not traveling as much as I should be or I wish to. But then, yeah, I've covered a fairly decent amount of places and time here traveling in and across Cairo, in the great civilization which lies to the south of Egypt, Luxor, Aswan, great cities of Alexandria. Then obviously some recreational places like Hurghada and Sharm el-Sheikh. Yeah, now another thing, the Moses story, and you've heard about, the burning bush and Sinai and all that thing. So I hope to travel there soon. And then there is this a beautiful city called Siva. Not a city, it's like a settlement somewhere deep into the deserts.
Siva.
Yeah. Siva, yeah. You probably would have heard of it. Yeah, Siva. And then obviously Cairo is like an addiction in some way, So we can talk about it. Yeah, Cairo is beautiful. So I'm learning the history of Cairo, and every time I read something, I make sure that I travel there, watch it for myself, and see it.
So wait, you chose Arabic. So there are many countries, no, like who speak Arabic. Would they only send you to Cairo? Or you could have gone to any of those, or do they?
So that's the thing, Now, if you see the Arab world, there are certain places which you can call as a nerve center of civilizations, Mm-hmm. For example, in the Arab world, I could say there are few cities which are really, really, thriving. One certainly is Cairo. Cairo is probably, it was established in 900 by the Fatimids. You heard of Fatimiyun in Arabic. So they were the ones who established. So it's probably 1,000 years old history to Cairo. But if you really dig deeper, you can see like Memphis and all here, which is really old. the step pyramids of Saqqara and all that, the first type of pyramids. But then this modern city of Cairo was from 900 AD. And then there are other important places like Damascus in Syria, and there is Baghdad in Iraq, and then which else can you say? Maybe Morocco and like Maghreb, this Tangier and Fez, places like that. That's pretty much it. I think the great civilizational places of Arab world happens to be these particular, and obviously Beirut. So in our batch, it was chosen that this American University Cairo, since it has a rich legacy of training Indian diplomats, and also the American precision and the way in which the university conducts their courses. It's an accelerated course exclusively, and it's also a place where a lot of diplomats from different parts of the world come and train. So probably because of that, the ministry has chosen Cairo as a station for us to come and train.
Yeah. So there are no standard students in your class, probably, or all of them are in a diplomatic or
no?
Some
There are a
government.
couple of them. So there are a couple of them who come from time and again. But no, mostly I think it's a diplomatic core. Yeah.
So you mentioned a couple of cities like Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo, and you call them the cultural seed-like cities. So what are certain elements that are used to identify them as such? Like for Egypt, for example, I can picture like the pyramids are an easy guess of providing a timeline on how far back civilization went. But what about Baghdad and what about Damascus?
So if you really see, there is a golden age for different civilizations. Now, similarly, there was one period in the history where the Islamic world was probably the most thriving, the best in the world, at that point of time. So that is like this medieval period. Islam was really a very forward-looking, a religion which gave equality to a lot of people. It gave rights to women. It was a very which promoted science, a language of science, which promoted people to do trade and different stuff like that. So if you see, at that point of time, you had the Dark Ages in Europe. Like you would have seen, the church and the Catholic Church. What do you call it? That place. And then you can see another set of things like in India also and China also, where the economic activity was slowing down. You would have heard, the demonetized economy, the land grant economy of early, Indian societies, where nothing great is happening. Rather, it's a very subsistent, but again, very debated. There are people who debate on it, whether it's a third urbanization of Indian economy or whether it is a decay of Indian economy. So, but one thing is for sure, if there is one place in the world at that point of time where knowledge, trade, culture, architecture, everything was thriving, it was in the Arab world, and in particular under one dynasty called as the Abbasids. In Arabic we call Abbasiyya. So this Abbasiyya, their capital was in Baghdad. So that's why this became a very important place in history, where it actually served as a place where people came together. But also, if you really look at Iraq as a whole, they are also a great civilization, isn't it? The Mesopotamia and all that, all old cities, you would have heard about these things, Babylon. So they are actually, quite significant that way. But in the modern medieval context, Iraq was a very interesting place, especially Baghdad. So I think it was a very, and interestingly, I think the post-Gupta period had trade links with Baghdad as well. It was very clearly linked with the northern part of India. So I think there are always, and knowledge, like almost every possible knowledge in the world, because Arabs were avid traders. They went all across the world. They assimilated all the knowledge. They brought all the knowledge here. They translated almost every single work. They translated to Arabic. And you can see that, like, for example, you think about algebra. Like, it's so, for those kind of things. In fact, I keep telling about this story. It's very interesting. For example, have you ever wondered why in mathematics you always use this thing, let the unknown be X? Have you understand why is it X? Why not A or B or Z, or why is it X? So I think the answer to that might be here in Egypt or in the Arab world, especially in Baghdad, because in Arabic there is a word called a shy. Shy means thing. Shy. It's like like in Malayalam or shah jo bolte na, that shy. Shy means the thing. So and when they used to form their equations, and when they used to contemplate on the unknown quantity, they used to keep saying shy. From there the Greeks picked it up, and they wanted to say it shy, but then in Greek the equivalent word is, there's a word called as Sai, the one which looks like Kai, yeah. And from there, when it went to Rome and the Eastern, Spain, and the other parts of European world, they didn't have this word called Kai. So the one which looked like Kai is actually X. You see the way how it is formed. So that's how the X came into existence. So I think those are very interesting places. I think Baghdad has a very important role to play in the way even how we were taught mathematics in our school. I hope I answer your question.
I never ever thought like when they told me find X, but no, I don't think it was this historical about it. Maybe.
Damascus, I think we can talk more about it in the sense that Damascus also, I think even after the Prophet's time, there was a third Khalifa, and there's one story. We can read more about it, but it's like Damascus immediately after the Caliphate time, the Rashidun Caliphate time itself. Damascus has become a very important center. Umayyads started from there.
I only recently realized Philadelphia was an Egyptian city apparently. When it was. I was just googling it to check, confirm.
Philae, the temple of Philae. Yeah, probably. Yeah. Philae is there. I mean, that's a beautiful piece of architecture. You can see this layers of history in Philae. You can see the ancient pharaonic time when the Greeks came. The Cleopatra kind of time. You can see another layer of that. Then you could probably see the Roman times. The Emperor Hadrian of Rome, he had visited, this is like deep into Egypt, almost closer to, Sudan. So you can see, Emperor Hadrian and his structures. And later you can see the Islamic, influences to those places. And later when Napoleon had come to the same place, there is a French.
Napoleon also came.
Yeah. I think, so I think all is in this temple of Philae. Probably you should look it up. It's beautiful. Temple of Philae, yeah. Maybe it could be from Philadelphia. If my memory serves me right, probably that is the one. Yeah.
It says city of brotherly love. It's Philadelphia, ancient Greek. Cairo.
So Egypt has a very long history. So what are some of the eras that have gone, that Egypt has passed?
So that's the thing, in Egypt, this river is very important. Like it's not like India. It's not like any other other civilization. It's mostly a dry desert area through which this great river flows. It's a beauty to see Nile. It's like somewhere when you go to deep south, you can see the blue Nile, literally blue. With your naked eyes, you can see the blue river. And across this thing, was the first set of civilization came. That is the pharaonic civilization. Pharaonic. What do you say? Pharaohs. Yeah. So this pharaonic civilization started in Memphis, that's near Cairo itself, and where they've started building some structures like pyramids to commemorate their ancestors and stuff like that. And then this started expanding. There was a continuous civilization for a very long time. And that's when they started getting encountered with, the other, places and other northern coast of, Egypt, the upper Egypt, the lower Egypt, as we call it, places towards, the Mediterranean coast. That is when they are coming in contact with the Greeks. And especially during Alexander's time, that is roughly 300 BC, Alexander launches an attack here to Egypt. And then he actually dislodges a lot of people, and then he establishes one city called as Alexandria in the northern coast of Egypt. But Alexander's period is very, very like a very transient phase in Egypt, because he's a human being, right? How long can he live? But what happens is his generals are the Ptolemies. So this Ptolemaic, phase starts. Thereby, there's a Greek-Egyptian mix which is happening. Very, very integrated kind of a culture. and which happens for a very long time, from for almost 300 to 100 years. You can see very clear Greek influence in Egypt, where you can see from the northern portion even till the southern portion, you can see it's a very strong influence of Greek under the Ptolemaic time. But this place is also very closely linked with the Middle East. For example, there are certain churches here in Egypt where you could find a cave, especially there's something called the Hanging Church in Egypt, in Cairo, where it is believed that Christ had lived. Because it is believed that Christ, the moment he was born, there was a mass execution of babies, I suppose. Aaron, probably you can correct me if I'm saying something wrong. They had to flee. So a lot of babies were actually, massacred there in the Levantine coast by the Romans. And that's when, Christ started, his mother and, mother's husband, they started coming to, and, they travel all the way across Nile. And there are some spots where, some caves in which, Christ had lived. I think, which is very good. So the point what I'm trying to say is that there are a lot of places in Egypt which is clearly linked with the Christian history, where Christ himself has come. And, then started this new kind of a Christian sect in Egypt. They're called as a Coptic Christians. They probably, would be way older than, the Christians of Kerala, who otherwise are considered like one of the oldest Christians in the world. This probably the Coptic Christians of Egypt could be probably one of the oldest, Maronite Christians of Lebanon, Coptic Christians of Egypt, and obviously, our people in central Kerala. They're also very old, Christians. So these are like very clear layer of Greek influence. And towards that time, as when Julius Caesar and the imperialism starts in Rome. Towards the end, you can see the Mark Antony. I think you guys have all read about Caesar and all, right? So that's Mark Antony coming to Egypt, and he has an alliance with Cleopatra. Romans had consolidated their power in Egypt, and Egypt became an essential part of the Roman Empire. In fact, it became one of the most important part of Roman Empire, because this is probably one of the places which produced maximum amount of wheat, and massive amount of wheat was shipped from Egypt to Rome.
You see all these people like conquering Egypt, like which you said, like I said, desert, desert kind of areas, just Nile passing through. What were they after? And I think you said it.
There are two things. That's very clear. There are two things. Ever since Romans took over Egypt, then for a very long period, till Gamal Abdel Nasser, there's no one who has ruled, Egypt, who was a local Egyptian. It has always been ruled by, people from outside. Either it's going to be Greek, otherwise it's going to be Rome, otherwise it's going to be Arabs coming from Syria, or people coming from Saudi Arabia and Yemen-related people, and then comes the Turkish influence. Was ruled from Istanbul. Then came the French. Then came the Albanian Basha, who's again Turkish ruler, but Albanian origin. And finally, it comes to British. And towards the end in 1900, mid of 1900s, you can see the power comes back to Egyptian after a period of 2,000 years. It's a very strange history. They've been, dominated by the foreign powers for a very long time. And what were they after? They were after two things. One thing is obviously the fertile plains of the Nile Delta and Nile. It's probably one of the most productive areas here. So in the Arab world, you can see two places. Like there's something called a fertile crescent. That is Lebanon, and you can see all this Syria. The second point why people were interested in Egypt was because it was the one which used to connect the trade links. It linked the Mediterranean and the European societies with the rich spices, strategically located thing. Red Sea, okay, you can come to Bernike. From there you can travel land route, or the Nile route you can take, and you can reach all the way till Alexandria. From there it is shipped to Italy, and from Italians became the great the seafarers, and from there it was shipped to different parts of the world. So this is literally a crossroad. Even if you look at the world history as well, if you see our Vasco da Gama, why was that, he was interested to take a direct route to, India? That was because, these routes got clogged up because the Ottomans, when they were, ruling this particular period in the medieval period, they tried to increase more tax and they tried to squeeze the Europeans. So what happened? You could see the trade route became clogged up. That's why Europeans had to come to India in a different way. So this is really at the crossroads of trade routes, Egypt. So it is one for the probably the food security, which is otherwise a very important thing. They never had fertilizers. There's no great agricultural revolution, the way how we do it right now, massive irrigation and fertilizers, nothing of that sort, right? So you need to have the fertile land to produce. So that's another thing. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I guess.
I think the Suez Canal also it's
Suez Canal is just an extension, but earlier it was like a mixed thing, isn't it? Like Suez Canal is coming much later, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You can see otherwise it was a land route and a riverine route, and you had ports, Red Sea port, Mediterranean port. So these are like two important seas are there here for them. You can see on one side you have Mediterranean, the other side you have a Red Sea. So beautiful connection and connected through Nile, except for a very brief period. And this is a perennial river. It doesn't dry up like our rivers in Kerala, because these are things which are coming from Ethiopian highlands, which is fed by the monsoonal rivers. It's a complex geographical feature as well.
I think the river is also a major issue in bilateral relations, I think, with neighboring countries, right? I mean, river rights
Egypt.
and all that. Yeah.
I think that's quite normal. I think everybody
common.
has this kind of. I think that's a problem with these kind of things happen, but they are dealing with it.
Are there any specific parts of history in Egypt that you want to dive into, or landmarks before we move on a little bit into modern times?
No, I think the one thing which I would really like to talk about is a certain aspect which I think not many people really understands. Is I think there's one book which is written about that 50 great battles in the world which changed history. Like the most important 50 battles. Now, if I could ask, Aaron, can you tell me a few of the important battles, maybe from the world perspective? What would you say? Maybe two or three of them. Can you say?
I would probably just quote World War I, II.
World War I, okay, but that's war. Battles.
I don't think I can come
People will say Battle of Waterloo, Battle of Saratoga, and all those things. Battle of Sedan, Battle of Plassey, yeah.
Indian.
But one thing people don't remember in India or anywhere else is something called the Battle of Diu. Have you heard of it? Battle of Diu? So this is something which is very interesting for me, and I really wonder why is that nobody really speaks much about this battle, because this book actually, the 50 great battles in the world, one of which is this Battle of Diu. And guess what? Who fought in this battle? It was in 1506, I think. It's something early 1500s. That's a time when the Portuguese are very active. 1498, Vasco da Gama finds a route to Kerala and the spice coast of Kerala, and he comes there, and everybody wants to share of it, because the moment you find a direct trade route from India to west, the Arabs are going to miss out on it. The traders are going to miss out on it. That is, traders are who? The Italians. The Venetian merchants are going to miss out on it. The Egyptian people are going to miss out on it. So at that point in 1506, you can see there is a grand coalition between the Venetian merchants, the Mamluks of Egypt, there's some rulers, emirs of Yemen or Oman, I think, the Sultan of Ahmedabad, this Gujarat, and then the Samudripad of Kozhikode. It is an international coalition who fights the Portuguese, and Portuguese single-handedly is able to defeat all these powers. But the point is, had Portuguese, lost this battle, the doors which the Portuguese had opened for the West for the colonization of India would have been closed. That means, in a very alternative way, the world history would have been different. India would not have been colonized, the West would not have been so rich, the commercial revolution might not have happened, industrial revolution might not have happened. So this is a single important battle where, there is a diplomatic relation in Gujarat, Kerala, and Egypt, and Venice, and Oman fighting Portuguese. How many people know about it? I always think it's a very interesting piece of history that nobody really speaks about. People know, okay, there's something called Battle of the UN. But in fact, the Ottomans had actually later come here, defended, Gujarat regarding some, siege warfare. There are more things to it. We can talk about it later some point when we have time.
So was it like a naval battle, or
this was mostly a naval battle? Yeah.
I remember reading about how the Arabs came to defend Samudri of Kozhikode when I think Portuguese came, I think. And
yeah, that point of time it's a very complicated history, man. I think Manu Pillai in his book was writing about, at some point of time there were so many Chinese presence in, in Calicut, and there were Chinese men who actually, served in Samudri's army, and you can see that influence. The Chinese were also very intricately linked with the the activities in the Indian Ocean, and for example in Sangam also, if you really look at it, Sangam, like in Sangam era they talk about a thing called a China Sunga, which is the Chinese silk, something which is coming from China, the China Wala, which is the Chinese fishing net, the China Chatti, and there are a lot of China thing. In fact, you see Kochi, what is Kochi? Like China, so it's like the Chinese are there. So it is a very interesting globalized, world, which we all seem to have forgotten. And sad thing is that, no historians, historians also have alienated themselves from this duty of educating people and about telling them about what is thing. And, it's certainly not my job. I'm a government servant. I can't do much about this, but, people like you, I think the story needs to be taken by you guys and, told to, different sect of our country and the world. These are very interesting things, or is it just in my head? I'm not.
No, it's 100% interesting, and I feel like the benefit that history personally does for me is it grounds me a little bit more, and it gives me a better, like, I don't feel as lost as I do. It puts the world that we are in right now. It gives a lot more sense, and and I feel I understand the relation that neighboring countries have with each other. Like we spoke about China, and so we're having the same conversations right now, like in the present world. So it's nice to see the parallels being drawn. Let's move closer to home, which is Kerala in India. I was curious if you can provide some sort of insight into the sort of internal and external forces that have had an influence on us as Malayalis.
So, yeah, I think this is one topic. I think it is always there in my mind, and I keep thinking about it. I think the first, one way of people looking at the origin of Kerala and, what sort of people we are comes from this book called as Keralolpatti by, Edutachan. So in this thing, I think he is a person who talks about this divine story about, about Parashurama Kshetra. Parashurama came there, he took his axe, he threw it into the sea, and it fell somewhere from Gokarna till Kanyakumari. The land, receded, and you have an emergent coast. That's exactly what geographically they call it. Even now, geographically, it is substantiated that Kerala is an emergent coast. That's why we have this very deep ports and all, right? So again, the point what I'm trying to say is that even though I don't personally believe in this kind of mythological supernatural theory, it speaks about it. But does it mean that we can completely discard the kind of information which is provided by Edutachan in this book? No. I think there is going to be some amount of truth to it. But if you really dig deeper to it, I think there is this book called Sridhar Menon's A Survey of Kerala History. I think that's the book's name. The Sridhar Menon speaks about different layers of people who were there here in Kerala. Certainly, one of the oldest ones would be people who lived in the forest, the Adivasis, whom we call So they were definitely there, and you can see Paleolithic sites in Malambura and Palakkad. That's around the place where I'm from. So where you have a certain set of people, you can come to deep southern Trivandrum and these sites also in the forest. There were a lot of people who used to be settled there, and it is classified into two different racial groups. One is the Negroid group, who are rather not too tall. The nose are a bit, stubbed, and they have very curly hair, and not too tall. So this is one group of, and which is there. I think he has quoted some set of tribes in Kerala who has very strict, Negroid features. At the same time, you can see the other set of people who are as the proto-Australoid. So they are the people who are taller, whose skin is not as dark as the Negroids. Their hair is not as curly as the Negroids. Rather, they have a wavy hair, which many of us still have. Like mine is a wavy hair. Mahat has a wavy hair. So all these kind of. You had wavy hair. So I think Anganala, you can. Sorry, they had many people that way. But rest, most of them, like 99% of us who have come, who are currently call ourselves as Keralites, are people who have come from outside, no doubt. Except for these two, proto-Australoids and Negroid, right? Everybody is up from outside, no doubt whatsoever about it. So that's what our this person speaks about. And now here is when the new, I think Manu Joseph, he has written a very interesting book. He's a Malayali as well. He has written this book called as, have you guys read it? Early Indians by Manu Joseph. It's a very interesting read. Probably you should. And one of the theories, I mean, his is like a much more deeper thing. He's taking this maternal DNA and some haploid, which is a bit technical. You should know a bit of this chromosomal way of looking at these things. But by and large, what I could gather from a couple of sources here and there is that from India per se, you had a proto-North Indian, a proto-South Indian, which is intermixing with the Iranian agriculturalists. So invariably throughout India, what you can see is you have this old Iranian agriculturalist tribe who settled in different part of the the subcontinent. So that is one of the interesting, which is very clear as well. Like Malayali is also, which I don't know if not a lot of people have talked about it, but I have this very weird sense of connection when I look at Iran's culture and Kerala's culture. Somehow it is very, I don't know, I've never read anybody really speaking about it. Somebody could actually prove me wrong or establish the connection if they could. For example, our festival of Vishu. Now in Vishu, you have some weird kind of flower, and you have a mirror, you have some kind of all goodness, all vegetables and fruits and stuff like that, and you put and you go and see it, Vishu Kani as you call it, right? But at the same time, if you look at Iran as well, they have something of the similar sorts. They have a mirror, they have a violet color flower, they have goldfish in a bowl, and they have good things present there. They also have the similar kind of an arrangement. So which is very interesting. And if you really look at their, it's very, very interesting. For example, Kerala, whatever we keep talking about Kerala as the Christian culture, one of the oldest Christians, one of the oldest Muslims, even when Prophet was alive, you had Chairman Perumal and all these people sitting off to Mecca, having this kind of link, and first Chairman Masjid, probably 7th oldest mosque in the world. So Kerala speaks about all of this. But what is not really spoken about Kerala is Kerala is also a very Vedic place. Like Vedic in the sense, whatever has been lost in Punjab, this Vedic culture would have started in Punjab, and it went to UP and Bengal and all this thing. But certain religious practices of the Vedic time is completely intact in Kerala. For example, you might have heard about this Agnishchayana and things like Atiratram. Like one MT's movie is there, Atiratram. You can see that old Somayagam. It is actually happening in Palakkad and Thrissur and all. You'll find these kind of things where I think Harvard made a very beautiful documentary about Altar of Fire. If anybody could just watch it, it's so beautiful and very. I think this Asko Perpola. He's a Sanskrit linguist, he's a very great guy. He has also commented on these kind of things. So basically what they're trying to do is, they have this 3 type of Agni and how they do this ritualistic, practices where, and, you are supposed to give offering to, the god, and the Vedic people did, do meat as sacrifice. Later, we have substituted it. I think, I think because of a lot of cultural reasons, I think, they've all, so Ada that you see in Hindu customs these days, like something which looks like white, not too flavorful, but it looks like meat a bit. So Ada is something of that sort, right? Meat. So you can see the scholar in that particular Harvard documentary says that it's a Nambudiri scholar who says that we have tried to substitute the meat with these kind of things, the Ada. So Kerala is also very, very Hindu and Vedic in that sense. So you can see clearly a set of people who have come from, that region, a set of Arab migration you can see, which enriched that Islamic culture. It is said that when the Saint Thomas, Thomas the Apostle Thomas the doubting Thomas, what is it called?
Thomas.
Yeah. So Saint Thomas, does he? I'm not sure. They say some other word for it as well. So when Saint Thomas came to Kerala, it is said that he was welcomed by a Jewish girl playing a flute who could speak Aramea, which is a language which is spoken by, Christ in the Middle East, and they could communicate. And there was a Jewish population, and there was a very active Jewish community in Kerala as well, isn't it? Like, I think after the second temple got broken, Solomon's time itself, there are a lot of people who were here, and many of these people converted. And there are a lot of other stories to it, about some priest praying, and that is there. And you can see a lot of Tamil influence, and you can see. I mean, it was a very Tamilakam was an integral thing. So the Sangam literature really speaks about a lot of things, and in fact, you can speak about things like the old Sangam stories, Kannaki, Kovalan, Silapatikaram. Yeah, so all of this is linked inextricably with Kerala, trade route, Romans, everything. They've talked about it. In Palakkad, you have this points where this like Vaniyankulam, I think is where people used to trade. The Sangam Tamil country people used to bring their trade till here. The Romans used to come here. The Roman coins are excavated in Kochi. One lady was washing clothes. She threw away the water, and then suddenly, what pops out is, the Roman amphora jugs, the Augustus Caesar's, golden coins, and, Pliny the Elder writing letters saying that, the Roman gold is draining to, India, particularly to Kerala, I presume, which is also true because, largest amount of gold holding in the world is in actually South India. It's not from something which happened with the Gulf money. I think it's some time immemorial it is there, I think.
Even the temple, no? Padmanabha temple has this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think. Mahati wanted to say something, add something?
Yeah, about Sangam, like how far back are we talking about when you say Sangam? Like, just a quick question, like timeline.
So Sangam, we are talking, pardon me if I'm like, speaking very fast and, speaking a lot of things, but Sangam is something which is like, you can do 2,300 years ago. From that, so you can say 300 AD, say like 300 BC, say like 300 AD. Maybe you can define it different ways. This is a time when, so basically that's the thing, you can have something called as a Mahashila Yugam, the megalithic period. If you go to places like Idukki, like, Marayur, you have like Muniara. You come to like Kochi, you will have, Kodakkal, Toppikal and all, this very weird kind of, where large stones have been arranged. And, it has been, people commemorate their ancestors, which means that, one person can't do it. A lot of people has to come together, cut the stone like this. That means it shows some kind of a society and civilization developing in that kind of place. But interestingly, same thing you can find in Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, but not just there. You can also find it in Gone Tribe, in Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh and all these places. Exact same megalithic structures. And the problem is that, because megalithic culture of our country has not been effectively integrated into the mainstream history telling, I think, we have not been able to give a complete picture about history yet. There's a lot of scope of work for history in our country, especially in megalithic and integrating it with, this. The same thing, if you really go to London or Spain, you can still see the big stone structures. You can see these kind in France, in Spain, in London, in a lot of places, you can see these big stone structures, which is megalithic, mega as in big, lith, any stone, Mahashila Yugam, big stones. So, these kind of needs to be researched. A global project could fund this. You can see it came for pepper. There is a historian, her name is Champaka Lakshmi. And Champaka Lakshmi, what she did, and she's trying to comment on this urbanization between north and south. Like in northern, you can see the Mahajanapada. You can see from Gandhara, Mathura, Takshashila. You can see, like Pataliputra, Angarajyam. These kind of thing. Ashmaka. A lot of things are there. In great cities. They are economically earning because of the internal trade in northern India, especially through the Gangetic, valley. But if you look at, our southern thing, the urbanization is coming from side, and at least it is her, argument. But again, this is a very evolving topic because recently in Kiradi and your place, Mahat, I think. You're from Pathanamthitta, right? I think because of the floods, I think more evidence have come. They were trying to establish, some are saying that the southern civilizations might be as old as Indus Valley civilization. Kiradi excavation in Tamil Nadu, which is happening right now, there's a very interesting study because it is trying to link the urbanization of South India and its antiquity, because somehow in India we think something which is antique is very precious, and which is obviously it is, but there's some kind of a race and a lot of definitions involved in these particular topics. So these are very evolving topics. One needs to look at it in a very calm way and probably decipher it. I
think that brings us nice.
So I'm layers of you can see the Negroids, the Proto-Australoids. You can see the layers of Jewish people coming. You can see the rise of Christianity. You can see people from at least the modern history with the Vedic knowledge, and that is, I think, which is also might be true because a lot of things. Nambudiri Brahmins of Kerala. It's a very interesting study. And in the Nambudiri Brahmins of Kerala, they speaks about, they come from Ahitchatra. Now, Ahitchatra was the capital of Panchala, which is a very important thing in, our Mahabharata, where, from Panchala, a lot of people started coming to Ahitchatra, from Ahitchatra, and they came to a place where the snakes were common, which is our Kerala. And, they had a different kind of, ritualistic thing, the way they tied their hair, the white clothes, and the Naga Radhana. All of this is very clearly linked from a migration from, obviously, see the Konkani migration from 500 years ago. A significant number of people, I have a lot of friends who are Konkani Brahmins. So them, and at Kozhikode, if you really go and, at any point of time you had, Telugu migrations. That is there. And in Palakkad, you can see, the king of Palakkad is called as Venginad Nambidigal. So what is this Vengi? Vengi is actually somewhere in, Andhra Pradesh, when the Chalukyas, it's very common. They from there, from, the Andhra coast people have migrated to Palakkad. During Palakkad, the Pattar, what we call, the Iyer community, when the Shaivite, Vaishnavite fight was happening. And I think, there are a lot of things.
I don't know if you have heard about this. I don't know if it's a theory, if it's a fact, but like apparently Kerala itself was a part of Madagascar, and then at a point, and we separated and we joined the Indian subcontinent. That's when there was. So have you heard of this theory, like the Madagascar?
It is absolutely true, isn't it? I think that I think in geography we keep talking about. There's something called a Pangaea and something, and it was that, and what is it, Gondwana land and some other land. One went up. We were in the south, and then it split. And Madagascar is a part of this thing, and the rock evidence are there. But I don't think human beings were there at that point of time. I think the migration and the human beings development came much later, I think. But it is Antarctica, India, and this Madagascar were actually to Indo-Eurasian plate, and they were creating the what do you call the young fold mountains of North India, and which gave rise to Western Ghats itself is a proof of our Indo-Australian plate running into our this Eurasian plate. Huh? I don't know. I'm not an expert in geography. I can't really say anything.
And again, when I had asked you like to, if you could talk about history, you said, I'm not a historian, I'm a history, what do you say, history buff. That's how you would describe yourself. Yeah, again, coming back to Southern India and history and, celebrating our culture and history, like you said, mainstream history, I don't think we have learned much of the Southern history. Do you have a take on that? Like we always learned more about the Mughals, the battles in the north, but what's your take? Like it's not being celebrated as as much as it should be. Like you said, there's so much potential probably, but
yeah, I think but there's so much only a curriculum can teach you, because a curriculum has a lot of restriction, and but it is also a part of people's genuine interest of knowing who they are and where they come from. I think a part of it is also upon us to know it, and then a part of it is also on the creative content generators of our generation. I think right now. I think that's a very important thing. The kind of social media influences that we have. Sorry.
That's us.
I think yeah, you should really have a say in and bring them together and give a more concrete, comprehensive, kosher picture of history. I think you can do it by that way.
I had two additional questions.
Please do, please.
So my question was basically around. Both of them are related to education. So my first question is like, what are the sources of information that you use to keep yourself updated? Can be related to historics. Like I glanced through your Twitter feed. You had reposted certain articles. So maybe you can share your sources.
I think I am more of a the new gen guy that way. I am not an old school book guy anymore. I used to that, and I read not a lot of books, a few books. But these days, I think a lot of information that I collect is maybe through social media. To be very honest, through Twitter, and follow the right set of people, then go there and then research about it. So one is Twitter. The second one is YouTube. You should know really. I mean, in fact, my whole of my history understanding comes from these courses by the government. Government has put up all these videos from St. Xavier's College, Calcutta. Our history, they had put up all these courses, and then I think that's also Vidya Mitra. There's one YouTube channel where you have different things. It's a completely government-funded project. MHRD does it. Not all of them are great, but most of them are as well. They have rich content there. And then you follow a lot of interesting people like William Dalrymple and professors of JNU, and then after I got involved myself with the history scene, then I started involving with a lot of other youngsters, like young people like Manu and all. I read all of his books, Manu Pillai, but then I also got to speak with him, and it was quite good. For a while, I think Clubhouse was a craze. So, I picked up a lot of things. I mean, it is more on a passive side than active. I think I don't really engage into the media and, try and understand more than to speak. I think I listen a lot when it comes to these things and read a lot than to write. So I think most of my learning comes from, YouTube, Twitter, some channels, and, speaking with people.
Would you be willing to provide a set of 3 Twitter handles and 3 YouTube channels?
Just a few Twitter handles which I follow.
I mean, it doesn't have to be right now. Like once we're done with the podcast, we can just summarize it and provide it as a resource. Like 3 Twitter handles and 3 YouTube channels.
Okay. Okay, so I think the one thing which I really follow is this international relations. There's this thing called as, most of my reading is through the international relations these days, the economics, the foreign affairs. These are the kind of things which I really look. And then I think William Dalrymple is one person whom I really follow, and to see what he has to say. And in YouTube, I told you, right, this Vidyamitra is it's like a search-based thing. So I search something and it comes out. That is it. And I watch a lot of these small documentaries, which are in regional languages as well. I feel like Asianet News has a big series of that thing, and ABP News in Hindi. Surprisingly, some of their documentaries have come out really well. There's a series called Pradhan Mantri, 7 RCR, 7 Race Course Road, Prime Minister's Address. So these things I really love, and then I keep watching it again. I think Crusades ke liye I had studied this Al Jazeera's documentaries I had watched from an Arab perspective, and I think I did a couple of courses on our course from Pennsylvania State University and Haifa from Israel, and I've done their courses. Also have a decent library here, so I keep reading from that. Either it is like movies or music, or it's going to be this. Yeah.
And
okay, yeah.
No,
You should. No, I was thinking about I'm curious about how, as an IFS officer, how your usual day goes by, whatever you're allowed to tell us, of course.
No, I don't have any problem telling you. I think different days are different. It's a very dynamic life, and it's not like an administrative officer's life where you have a certain thing and you have to do. But yeah, they have a routine. But for us, I think it's a bit different, and particularly for me, I'm not in that full-fledged diplomatic mode yet, because I'm also undergoing this language training. So I have a lot of things to do in the university. I speak up Arabic. And because I want to cement my Arabic, and I personally think that nobody can teach you a language. They can just guide you, but most of the language happens passively when you are interacting with the commoners and people. So you tend to make a lot of acquaintance here in Egypt, the locals, with different strata of the society. Some of them are the doormen of apartments. Some of them are your friends from university. Some of them you meet during some gathering, or some diplomat's son, or who you meet them. And yeah, I think these are the ways in which part Arabic learning is a very active and passive way it goes. Another set of things which we do is we have certain usual routine work in embassy. So you have to do some paperwork, which is like any other government job. You have to be that bureaucratic mode of a diplomat. You have to do certain job, to make some reports, and or if you want to communicate certain things, some admin work. So you have to take care of that. Part of it is also about reaching out to understand things from a diplomatic perspective. So you have to catch up with other diplomats from other countries, speak to them, discuss the issues, and understand what is happening. So I think part of it, not every day though, but at times you get those kind of opportunities. And some of them do actually become your friends as well. People from World Bank, people from WHO, people from Greek embassy, people from Thai embassy, and like all of these people, you get to do this thing. Sometimes because you are in a junior level here, you're mostly on an absorption mode. So you look and understand how ambassador works, and how agency conducts itself. Those kind of things. And then sometimes you have to through grand functions. Like I'm also a part. I'm completely looking after education in Egypt, which is nothing but we have to provide a lot of educational scholarships. Sometimes I have to do interviews of people. Write to Delhi. Sometimes we do that thing. We arrange scholarships for people. So sometimes it is meeting with those candidates. Scrutinizing their applications, looking at different things. Sometimes it's also about connecting with the alumni of Egyptian alumni who actually trained them, got training in India. So linking with them, talking with them, sometimes, some kind of development activities. It could be different things with sports, culture, history, archaeology. So, you get to do these kind of work. So, yeah, I think it's a mixed basket, and it's quite an interesting job for people who really are interested in a lot of things. Yeah.
Sounds very broad. And it's also nice that you have connection building baked into your job, so you get to meet people and interact and form connections. I find that very appealing.
Yeah. I think, but it's a matter of, I think every governance structure, doesn't work with e-governance and papers and files alone. Even though that is the bedrock of the governance is papers and files and all that thing. I think sometimes it's also good to be networked, to know the pulse of the people, the place where you're staying, the place of the government, even in the government apparatus back home in Delhi and Trivandrum and Palakkad and all that thing. You should know about these kind of things, because you cannot be divorced from the reality. It looks like a diplomatic life, it's a bit different things, but no, you need to have years listening to the murmurs of the ground. Yeah.
In the beginning of the episode, you spoke about how India faces systematic problems. And I want to particularly ask you about education. What do you think specific? I mean, it doesn't. Yeah, okay. Let's narrow down to India. What can change in the methodology of education for India?
So I think there are three aspects of Indian education. One is quality. And you need to have really high quality education which needs to be given to our youngsters, because if there is one way you can achieve greatness in one generation, it is only through education. So I think education is the most important thing, and education, one element of it is to have quality education. Point number one. Point number two, because we are living in a different social setup, we need to have the idea of equity. Just because some rich kids from some urban areas are going to get some education and quality education, that doesn't mean India will progress. We need to make sure that people from disadvantaged communities, people from rural areas, people from women, transgenders, sexual minorities, people from tribal community, people from Dalit community, Muslim community, people from other backward communities, anybody who's Buddhist, people who have been not mainstreamed. Equity element should be integrated in the way how we are delivering education. So the first one is quality, the second one is equity, and third one is access. I think we need to spread education also, because it's a huge country. It's a very huge country, 1.4 billion people. So we need more and more of these things, so that people get access to these institutions quite well. So this, I think it is in this triangle that Indian education is. Because I'm saying it with certain amount of certainty, is because I've thought about it like for a very long time. I keep thinking about it every single time. So I think in a governance perspective, I think, yeah, the answer should be within this triangle of access, equity, and quality. Yeah. Now, one way, I know a lot of people might differ with me on this thing, but I think we have done a decent job with our school primary education and school education. I think it might not be a bad time to at least one part of the state machinery should really focus on the higher education aspect. Primary education, I'm not trying to say one or the other, but I'm saying that higher education needs focus in India, especially the new and emerging technologies. Like we need to have material sciences, we need to have people who run like manufacturing processes, we have chemical engineers, biomedical engineers, we need to have people who work on science, arts, history, language, computational linguistics, like a gazillion number of specialized branches, artificial intelligence, cyber security, cryptography, a lot of things, quantum, and like a gazillion number of things I can think about it. We need to do that. But one thing which I think could be very transformative would be, is something which is reflected in the the new educational policy, and that is the idea of medium of education. I think sometimes it is really effective when you listen certain thing in your mother tongue. Like I have been a teacher myself, and I have taught probably the cream de la cream of a generation. Like people who even think about writing a civil service exam. They are quite smart. Otherwise, they will never come and sit in that that classroom just to pass time. They would come there because they think they are quite smart. And I have noticed the moment I speak in like Hindi to a North Indian crowd, if I speak Malayalam to a Malayali crowd, the absorption rate is much higher. I don't know whether you guys will concur with it, but then yes, that doesn't mean that you have to like completely shun English. No, I'm not trying to say that. And I think certain ways in which medium of education might be, one needs to rethink it, at least certain part of it, mix that one, probably that one. Second one, I think a lot of people might disagree with me, but I think education through internet, I think that is very effective. I think at least in higher education where, you can have a quality education every single time. Because I remember when I was in IIT, I had a lot of, holes in my understanding of things. But surprisingly for me, all my, those days, this, I think MHRD thing was not that famous, but then I did study open courseware of MIT, ocw.mit.edu. It's a very, I think I spent good lot of my time, seeing those video lectures by, MIT. And, Professor Strange, Arthur Meta, linear algebra, probability theory, everything, I studied from there. So I think I'm a big proponent of, internet and, net-based learning. Yes, it is very passive. You can't really ask your professor there. But I think, at least it is there. High quality education. You need to really find people. Net is something because it will unleash a thing to, people that way. And I think vocational training, I think that's one thing. Linguistic training, especially our people who are going to service industry, I think, we need to make sure that, people are smart in certain languages. I particularly feel that especially a place like Kerala should really promote other kind of languages, like German, French, Arabic. I think as much as we are promoting German and French, I don't think anybody is promoting Arabic because these are it opens doors to 22 countries, and and many of things do happen in English as well. Like there are a lot of nurses who go from Kerala to Gulf to learn this thing. Why not teach a bit of Arabic? There's no harm in doing it. But you can find the Goethe Institute, Max Planck, Max Miller Institute, everywhere. You can see Alliance France. You can see like everywhere. But do you really find an Arabic institute? Maybe not. I think that is there. I think we need more things about diplomatic studies and diplomatic centers, think tanks, a lot of things. I think it looks like a very far-fetched thing, but I think this is needed. Someday, I think we'll reach there, inshallah.
I'm glad that we're having these conversations, and you are part of what is the phrase that you use? What I'm trying to say is you're part of the framework of the Indian government. So I'm glad that we have people like yourself who are having such conversations, and that makes me optimistic for the future.
No, I can assure you certain things. I mean, let me assure you completely that the ministry, not our ministry, the educational ministry back there in Delhi, completely aware of things, and they're absolutely doing a wonderful job. And there are great thoughts revolving around this particular thing. I don't think anybody's taking it any light. I think the new educational policy, I would honestly request everybody to sit and read. I mean, at least people like you who are really interested in it, and if you have that question, I think NEP is the right thing to go. Just sit and read what it is, I think. And the people who have contributed to it is like very smart people. Yeah, I think like this. I think Kasturi Kansar was there in that group, I guess. I think, but then Professor Manjul Bhargava, like the greatest mathematician of this era. He was a part of it. Early intervention, teaching kids in the early age. They have actually integrated coding into our Indian curriculum. Just coding is there not only for programmers. You are a musician, you might know how to play with software to produce a certain thing. So to make this thing, you can really yield a lot of information and opportunities. They're doing those kind of things. I think the new education policy also speaks about the learning outcome, getting break, internships, equivalency, a lot of things. I think things are going good, but I think it will take some time, But let's hope, but I'm very sure. I hope and pray that we will live to see a time where the country would be in a much better state than the way At least we had seen it. Yeah. I think we should leave that country, better than what we have received. Yeah.
Definitely. I have a small statement to make, which is, and I'm curious if you agree or disagree, which is scaling might be a new problem to human beings, and that might be part of the problem on like why we're having issues with expansion of cities and maybe dispersal of policies, implementation of policies. And like we said now, how it might take time for like this new education policy to be implemented and to find its root. So yeah, my statement is basically that scaling might be a new age problem.
Actually, it is yes and no. I think, for example, education, I can really think, because I think we are rolling out 5G soon. And I think South Koreans and a lot of people have been already working on the next generation, wireless technologies, and already saw this kind of, the augmented realities and virtual reality things coming on. Once we tap into a groundbreaking effect, I think all of this might change. Because the corona period and the lockdown has really proved that you can work from home and deliver things. Suddenly you can see so there are times when Bangalore is not as crowded as it used to be, because a lot of them still are working from home and there's flexibility of doing things. There is a serious drop in the workforce in at least high skilled areas. Why? Because people are demanding more. The decongestion is happening in many ways. I'm not trying to say this complete, but I'm saying that there is a way in which this could be dealt with later. I think Denmark was it they came from a 5 days a week to 4 days a week, till the productivity increasing measures, and scalability is, I think. And then but you also have this phenomenally new thing, which is for example, you can see like what is that that 3D printing. Earlier, we used to take a block and cut it out in a subtractive printing. Here, you can just print whatever you need, you see. So, these kind of things will be material changes will happen. And now you can see whatever was needed there to be produced in China or, in some expert labs. You can produce in any small village if you have a 3D printer, if you're smart enough. And there are businesses which are coming from there. So new technologies are really coming to, help people. And like, high-speed modem, I think, Kerala government's, the SK phone, I think it's a decent thing. But there are opinions for it and against it. But the idea is that, we have become a digital state. In Kerala, we have every village has been connected by high-speed, this thing. I think we also have a Digital India program where actually internet is reaching nook and corner of the country, so where we can have this kind of thing. And it's also not just a government's push alone. I think the market is also effectively linked with this particular providing services. If market is linked, I think sustenance and what do you say, the quality will improve. So there's a lot of things aspect which might come into this particular realm. I think we really have to sit and, for example, look at this digital payments. Yeah, I mean, good Lord, can you sometimes it's very hard to find in other countries also. You go to the street vendors in Kerala, or you buy a small karika or coconut water, you can pay with UPI. Yeah, I think that's a power of amazing how sometimes we tend to give less credit to ourselves when it is due. Sometimes it's just beautiful the way how our digital payment ecosystem is working. And there are statistics which have come. I think more than China and US put together. I think the more digital transaction is happening in India.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Like I agree with the coverage and all, like network. Like even in here in the UK, I am sometimes surprised. Like there's no coverage in. Even in cities, like certain areas, you won't get the coverage. So I think like India did a phenomenal job in that. I don't know how, why, but yeah, it opens up new doors.
Why and how? It is government. And the people together, government, people, private sector, everybody has worked really hard to deliver this thing. No, I'm not kidding. The laurels go to the people of India, the private sector of India, the government, the regulator of India. TRAI has made a very good job. How a regulator should work, the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, the MIT, the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, massive technology. There's a lot of things. I mean, there's higher limit. We could do a zillion number of things, but cheap how cheap is it? I don't think anywhere in the world will you be able to get internet the way it is cheap in India. Massive. Imagine the power of people when they have access to internet. All it requires is a manual laborer to have a phone and his kid to see some information through the mobile phone of his dad and pick up something. And the data is cheap. No, we are not going to. We fought a lot of things. Our country has really fought the idea of net neutrality. I think you guys all remember it, right? We have contemplated, constantly discussing it. 5G. We're very careful. We are national. A lot of aspect to it. We're doing a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think we way exceeded our time limit. Is it?
Yeah,
but I think this is a very nice point to end it. Like it's filled me with a lot of optimism for the future.
True.
And I'm glad that things are proceeding. Things seem like a very common word, but I'm glad that we are moving in a right trajectory. I'm glad that we have good people in positions of responsibility and power. So yes, we definitely look forward to having you on the future podcast again. We look forward.
But I think I would really wish you guys also quite well. I think you guys are very important in the terms of plugging the gaps in our information dissemination, and whatever needs to be told. I think you guys have a very important role to play. Yes. Not just you, I think a lot of people, there are stories to be told, or reporting needs to be done, some help needs to be there, amplifying costs, a lot of things are there. I think you can be as a feedback mechanism to, a lot of things. So I think I wish you also all the very best. I hope, you guys do a greater job in future as well.